Welcome to Startup Day Johannesburg. And Startup Day is it's a really special event for startups. It's my favorite type of event. And what we do is we focus on the needs of startups from both the business and the technical side. And it's a series of events we've actually run all around the world. So we have them in San Francisco, New York, London, Berlin, Singapore, and of course here today in Johannesburg. And this is the first one here. And we do these in startup hotspots. And the reason for that is to bring together the community and to share our learning and the learning from other startups. So to introduce myself, my name is Rob. I'm a solution architect for startups. And I focus on the early stage startups in the UK. But I wasn't always this. Before, I was a founder of a startup, a co-founder. And before then, I've always built technology. I come from an engineering background. And for me, the key thing was it was building the right thing. But I'd made many mistakes before. So rewind back to 2008. I had a great idea for a business. Actually, me and a friend had a great idea for a business. And we started to put it together. We started to build the website. We built the back end. We built the database. And then we launched. We went live. Everything was going great. We were growing quickly. The problem started when we realized we didn't know how to manage a database. And we spent a lot of time trying to learn and understand it. Patching, maintaining, updating, backups. But our growth caused us to go down. And it was a really painful, what we thought would be a few minutes turned to a few hours, turned to a few days. The most frustrating thing of all this is we didn't actually have to do this. We didn't have to run and maintain and manage our own database, to do the backups and hope the backups actually work and restore. Instead, we could have just used the relational database service to let this happen for us. And actually, I see this time and time again. The ability to be able to use a service that solves a large part of the problem for you and allow you to build your businesses. This is just a repeating pattern. It happens so often with startups. And at AWS, we're so lucky or privileged to have some of the hottest startups in the world running on us. If you think about the array and the difference in the type of startups that they're. So Deliveroo are a startup that focuses on delivering food to your doorstep. So you can order online the application and deliver food. They've had rapid growth over the last few years. And AWS has been there to help them grow and scale as their business have. Or if you go onto some of the more regulated technologies, so in the fintech in London, for example, Monzo and Starling Bank, they're building mobile-first banks on AWS. And I think the only constant about startups is they are continuously evolving, solving new challenges and using new tools to do that. And at AWS, we're here to help facilitate that evolution. Over the last 10 years, our pace of innovation has been increasing. The number of services each year, so each of these bars represent the services that are released, or services, features, and capabilities that are released for that year. And you can see every year, this is not only increasing, it's accelerating. So last year, there's 1,957 new features, capabilities, or services. So to put that into context, that means you as a startup, or your development teams, or sole developer wakes up to 5 new features and capabilities every single morning. And some of these make it easier for you to deploy, to manage or maintain. Some of these make things that just weren't feasible or even possible before something simple. But continuously, startups are using these new capabilities to deliver value to their customers. So first of all, I'd like to talk about Lambda. And this was released in 2014. And it was the first of the serverless technologies. It almost started that whole idea. And it was based around the core premise. If we can take away one key thing from what developers need to think about, they'll be able to move faster. And that, of course, was serverless. So instead now, as a developer, all you need to do is write business function code and deploy it to Lambda, and everything else is taken care of. An example of a startup that was very fast to use Lambda was Bustle. And Bustle, an online media company, they're based in the US. They started in 2013 and really quickly grew to 18 million monthly active users. And they were able to do this with a really small team. So they had a team of 14 engineers. And they attribute the reason they were able to grow so quickly to this number of users was they were able to take advantage of using Lambda so that they wouldn't have to scale EC2 instances. With Lambda, they're able to scale to virtual infinity as their users come in. And again, they don't have to think about scaling up or down. That's handled for them. So one of the way that they did this is they used API Gateway and Lambda listeners on the back of that. So the first application they built was for their data warehouse. So Bustle, they're an online website, and they were collecting information from all of their users. And you can imagine this information is really valuable. It gives you an insight of what their users are looking at, what they're interested in, what they want to do. So they decided they were going to give to all their internal teams this information. So on the front end, what would happen is each of the requests would be bundled together. They would then be sent to API Gateway. Lambdas would listen to the events, they would break them apart, and then start sending it to different data stores. So you'd have data stores like internal marketing tools, QuickSight dashboards, Redshift or S3. And from the back of this, they're able to then make data-driven decisions on the way that they develop their product and the content they're releasing for their users. And this is a tweet from Tyler Love, who's their CTO. And he's actually a bit of an expert in serverless technology. I'd really encourage you to take a look online for some of his videos. But he really distills the value that Lambda and serverless gave to them in a broader sense. He said they were able to remove the EC2 instances they had and instead deploy Lambdas and serve their 80 million users with a JavaScript front-end application. And they served over 1 billion web requests per month in this way. Yet, not only that, they were able to buy compute in 100 millisecond increments instead of needing a whole box. And they're able to never have any minimums. They don't need to pay for idle time. And they reduced their costs by over 80% taking this approach. So if we fast forward a few years and think about in 2017, SageMaker. SageMaker is our AI service, or one of our AI services to be more precise. And it was released in 2017, and it really allowed developers or data scientists to focus on the core prospect of building their machine learning services. So it focused on three clear tasks. The first one was to build the model, to design it. The second was to train it, scale up compute and scale it down, and then to deploy it out into the world, either on cloud or on physical devices. And SageMaker wrapped this up and made it easy for you. It had a really clear and simple mission, and that was to put machine learning at the hands of every data developer and data scientist in the world. Convoy, they solve a really interesting problem. So if you look at the US, trucks, so the lorries that carry goods across the country, they travel 95 billion miles per year. That's enough to circumnavigate the road 3.7 million times. Yet, in 2018, 40% of them journeys were empty. So Convoy are looking at the way to build a matching solution to improve the efficiency of the drivers, reduce costs for the drivers and the trucking industry, and reduce costs for the distributors as well. They use machine learning to solve this problem. And the reason that they chose SageMaker to help with this is because it allows data scientists to focus on their core job, which was building models. And yet at the same time, when they were building the models, they were able to hand off to the engineering teams a production-ready model that could easily be deployed and then spread out to their fleet. And today they're focusing on reducing the inefficiencies and improving the trucking industry as a whole. So I want to talk a little bit more about the machine learning services we have. And they broadly fall into 3 different layers. If we talk about the first layer, which is the lowest layer, so this is for the experts in the room, any PhDs or data scientists that want to have the lowest controls available, what you're typically looking for is tools and open ML frameworks. So if you're thinking about TensorFlow or PyTorch or MXNet. You want to have the interfaces that make this easier. Keras is an interface that sits on top that allows you to talk to these different frameworks. And of course the infrastructure, that key component. And within this, you have low-cost infrastructure that you can scale up and scale down as fast as possible. The second layer is, broadly speaking, where SageMaker fits. And this is the ML services. This puts you in control and you're able to build your models, but it abstracts away a lot of the complication. You can focus on building. There are many algorithms available to you that you can just use. Also, ground truth. It gives you the ability to build up training data sets just by saying whether it is correct or incorrect. And it uses machine learning to predict what it thinks the answer will be. If you look at training, it gives you the ability to spin up compute, high-powered compute, for the duration of a training job. And it can use hyperparameter optimization, which is HPO. And this allows you to, instead of having to tune that model manually, it uses machine learning to find the correct parameter set for you. Reinforcement learning is one of the most exciting space in learning as well. And again, this is another product that can be built inside of SageMaker. Once you have your model trained and deployed, trained and built, you want to put it out into the world to deploy it. And SageMaker helps with this. You can either deploy it inside of your VPC and you have an auto-scaling group behind the scenes to be able to respond to demand. You can do batch deployments, or you can deploy it on the edge into different devices. Yet for me, in many senses, this is the most important layer. This is the API services layer. So if you think about many developers, we use APIs all the time to make our lives simpler, to communicate and to add functionality into applications. With these API services, you don't need any data to train on. You don't need to have a knowledge about how it works behind the scenes, how the machine learning is acting. You're simply able to call the API services just like you would any other service, and then add human-like characteristics to your application, whether that's image recognition, voice detection, or the ability to go text-to-speech, or translation. And you can build chatbots too. And then, of course, you can do recommendations and even forecasting. So in 2018, we generally released Elastic Kubernetes service, so Amazon EKS. And this is a really exciting service for many developers. Many developers are keen to use Kubernetes to help build and scale their platform. And EKS makes this easier. You don't need to manage the master nodes, and a lot of the maintenance and patching is taken care of for you. So Snapchat, many of you will be aware of. It allows you to send messages and live media with your friends, and you can spread stories around the world. And they're really an interesting company for many reasons, but the reason I like them most is they move really quickly because they use open source technologies. And for them, Kubernetes was a key piece of open source technology that they were using. And the reason they're using it, again, is because they actually, when they started, this was their initial architecture, is they built a monolithic application to service the messages that were coming through. And this served them really well. So when you open the application, it goes straight to the camera, you can send the messages, and this would be handled by this messaging architecture. But as they grew, they realized they needed something to help break up this monolith so they could scale individually each of the different pieces. And actually, we have a talk later on this afternoon about getting started with microservices and containers, which I really encourage you to go along to if you want to find out a little bit more about how to do this with your own applications. And some of the key technologies they used, or Snapchat used to make this happen, were Kubernetes, of course. And this allowed them to distribute and orchestrate the containers and elements that were running on their infrastructure. Go is a programming language many of you will be familiar with. And they chose this because it focuses in on simplicity above everything. And it creates these small, fast executables with a low memory footprint. And Envoy, they use as an API gateway. So when you have a monolith, everything talks to that monolith. When you break that into microservices, it's a good idea to have a gateway on the front that receives all the requests and then can route it as needed. And they use Envoy for this, and also for their internal service mesh, so the data layer can talk to each other. And really, we've touched on a tiny fraction of the services that we have available inside of AWS. At the moment, we have 165 different services that you and anyone can take advantage of. And the array of these services fall into many different categories. And I really want to just call out a few. Developer tools. So as an ex-engineer, this is something I hold close. And the amount of developer tools that we have that allow you to move quicker and to build more reliably and more securely is a great thing. I really like CodeStar particularly because it wrapped together that whole experience of building an application, storing it in a code repository, then being able to commit, do builds, testing, and then have it deployed into live with a dashboard over the top so you know what's happening. The analytics services, these are incredibly valuable. The ability to be able to process large amounts of data with different tooling depending on the data access patterns. And of course, machine learning, one of the most exciting new areas where people are building products that would, using features that were really not possible before to create these human-like characteristics or being able to do predictions on large and difficult data sets. So I want to give you this quote from Jeff Bezos, our CEO. And the key important part I want to bring out of this is the term undifferentiated heavy lifting. And this is a term we actually use quite a lot. And it's really to describe the things that you don't need to do. They need to be done. It's just it isn't necessarily that you need to take this on individually as everybody. So at AWS, the core principle is to be able to give you primitive components that are individual that you can build on top of. They're reliable, they're secure, and then you can build your value on top of this. So to put that more succinctly, I would say that startups, you can build for cheaper and faster than you ever could before. And at the same time, it can be more reliable and even more secure than it was before using the cloud. And this is incredibly important because now our customers, our startup customers, are demanding more. Yes, they want to use the newest, coolest, innovative technologies that you're providing them, but they need it to be secure. And they need it to be reliable so they can trust it, so they can work with it on a daily basis. And yet, at the same time, you need to be able to build cheaply. You have limited resources, and of course you have limited time. So that speed to market is incredibly important. I've met many hundred startups over the time I've been here with AWS, and I've not met a single one that isn't incredibly hardworking. But really the key differentiator from what I've seen is what are you hard working on? Are you working hard building underlying components, patching, maintaining, updating? Or are you working hard delivering value to your customers, something that they will see? So I really encourage you to take a look and think about that. Now, one thing I would say is startups are, to me, as exciting as how important the problem that they're solving. So if we think about what this means, many startups are solving day-to-day problems, and some startups are solving some large problems that are affecting the world. So I'd really like to leave you with or play a video for you of the CEO of Thorn to describe the problem they're looking at solving and how they're doing it.
When we think about the real potential of what new technologies can do for our world, I have huge optimism, and I have to in this field. Thorn is a nonprofit, and we build new technologies to fight online child sexual abuse. On the same websites where you often see someone looking for a roommate, you selling your bike, you can go on and buy someone by the hour, and that someone may very well be a child. If we look just at the sheer scale of the problem, or how quickly it's growing, it can seem insurmountable at times. We're looking at 150,000 escort ads every single day. How do we sift through all of that? Manually, it could take months to collect the data that you need, Doing that with advanced technologies, you can get to the answer you're looking for within less than a minute. But what gets really exciting is when you deploy that algorithm to thousands of officers and they give the system feedback. And we, as a collective response unit, get smarter. That is a force to be reckoned with. I actually do believe we have an opportunity to eliminate child sexual abuse from the internet. And we will not do it without technology, and we will not do it without AI. The power of AI sits in all of our hands, and there are so many issues in our world today that deserve that type of ingenuity. Is it global warming? Is it curing cancer? What is it? You cannot beat being able to build and know at the end of the day you are changing lives. One of our engineers, after he started working here, he said, the most gratifying moment of my career was when I got news that the code I'd written had rescued a child. And that happened again and again and again. And it's helped identify over 10,000 children who've been trafficked. We're at a really amazing point in time right now. We know what is possible. It really lies within each creator out there. We have to believe that we as a society can do better. You just have to get started.
I think startups have a unique opportunity to really have a large impact on the world. There are many things coming together. Your ability, your creativity, your drive, and the amount that you care about the problems that you solve. Also, at the same time, the amount of data that's arriving into the world, the amount of physical devices is increasing. We have some estimates that put the number of connected devices in the world at 75 billion by 2025. And these devices are going to be collecting data. Some will be sensors, some will be actuators acting on it. And they'll be talking to each other, communicating. And perhaps many of you in this room will be building some of these devices or collecting the data from it. So imagine the good and the incredible value that you can create in doing this. And I would like to leave you with a question for all of you. What, as a startup, will you build next? You have all this opportunity and some of the incredible tools to help and make this possible. And I'd really love to hear about the things that you're working on and the things that you're building after the break. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.